I was sweating through my shirt, tongue dry as the Sahara, and all I could think about was the pint of double fudge swirl waiting for me in the garage freezer. After mowing the lawn in 97-degree heat, I all but sprinted to the freezer like it was a life raft in a sea of misery, only to find the container there, empty. Again. Just like last week. And the week before that. 4 pints of ice cream in 2 months, all mysteriously disappearing from a locked garage freezer. Not stolen from the kitchen. Not eaten by me. No trace. Just gone. If you've ever stared into an empty ice cream container you know you didn't eat, while slowly realizing someone is repeatedly breaking into your property for just dessert, you'll understand the kind of psychological unraveling I was facing. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful. Maybe I ate it during a midnight snack and didn't remember. Maybe my cousin who visited last month had a sugar relapse and was sneaking scoop. But after the 4th time, the evidence pointed in one clear direction. Someone was sneaking into my garage to eat my ice cream, and nothing else. Pizza? Untouched. Frozen peas? Still there. But the ice cream? Gone like clockwork. And every time I checked the security camera feed from my Ring cam, there'd be a weird glitch, like a blackout, right around the time I guessed the freezer had been raided. It was maddening. Digital poltergeist stealing snacks? I wasn't crazy. At least I hoped not. I vented about it to Lana, my best friend and local sushi bar owner. She thought I was losing it too, until she came over to binge bad reality TV, and we went for some ice cream only to find another empty pint, complete with a perfectly peeled-off safety seal. "This is precision work," she said. "You've got a dessert bandit on your hands." She laughed. I didn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed picturing someone, some bold, frosty-fingered monster, tiptoeing into my garage with a spoon and no shame. At 2 a.m., I got up and paced the living room. That's when the theory hit me like a snowball to the face. Karen. Hoi Karen. President of the Homeowners Association. Queen of Condescension. Emperor of Fines. She had a master key. She had the gall. And she had the history. This woman once fined my neighbor's 6-year-old daughter $50 for drawing chalk butterflies on the sidewalk. The only thing Karen loved more than bylaws was pretending she wasn't violating any herself. But accusing her without proof was risky. Karen didn't play fair. She played legal. The kind of legal that comes in laminated pamphlets and threatens lien notices if your trash bin is out 15 minutes too early. So I came up with a plan: bait her. Trap her. Get proof so good even she couldn't squirm out of it. The next morning, I made a casual Home Depot run. Along with mulch and zip ties, I picked up a battery-powered motion camera small enough to fit in a cereal box. At home, I hollowed out an old popsicle box, nestled the cam inside, and carefully placed it in the back of the garage freezer behind some fake, diet-friendly ice cream no one in their right mind would touch. For bait, I chose a luxurious pint of triple-chunk sea salt caramel swirl. The kind that comes in gold-labeled packaging and makes you feel like royalty just for opening it. Then I waited. That entire week I left the garage door slightly cracked during the day, a tactic Karen herself had once cited me for. This time, I wanted her to think I was being careless again, making it easy for her to stroll in for her icy heist. Meanwhile, I checked the hidden camera feed obsessively. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, false alarm, just a raccoon sniffing around. Day 3, jackpot. At 2:46 p.m. on a Wednesday, she appeared. Hoi Karen, in full safari mode outfit. Visor, fanny pack, clipboard tucked under her arm like she was checking sprinkler compliance. She looked both ways, stepped into my garage like she owned the place, and beelined to the freezer. She opened it, glanced around like a squirrel in a jewelry store, pulled out the pint, gave it a sniff, and walked away licking the spoon she brought with her. She even had the nerve to put the empty container back in the trash bin inside my garage. I sat in my living room with the footage paused on her ice cream-covered grin like it was the Zapruder film. I'd caught her, red-handed, spoon in mouth. And the wildest part? She looked proud of herself. Not desperate. Not sneaky. Just smug. Like she was entitled to it. Fueled by a mix of rage and disbelief, I marched over to her house that evening and knocked. She opened the door with that Karen smile. The kind that said she already hated the fact that you existed within her property radius. I didn't beat around the bush. I told her I knew about the ice cream, I had it on camera, and I wanted an apology and a promise she'd stay the hell out of my garage. She blinked, laughed, then flipped open her HOA clipboard like it was a magic wand. Per HOA Guidelines, Section 14B, she said, any unsecured garage may be inspected for pest control violations. Consider this a community courtesy. And if you're storing personal food improperly, that's a code breach. I could fine you for that. I was stunned. You ate my ice cream. I taste tested a suspicious item for safety, she said without missing a beat. It could have been expired. I was protecting the neighborhood. I walked away before I launched myself over her hydrangeas. I knew then, there would be no reasoning with her. She thought she was untouchable. Above the law. She wasn't stealing my food, she was asserting dominance. That's when the idea hit me. A twisted, brilliant, sinus-clearing idea. If Karen wanted ice cream so badly, I'd give her all she could handle. I would weaponize dessert. She wanted to steal cold? I'd serve her fire, green, screaming fire, frozen in a pint of perfectly sweet, utterly misleading vengeance. And so began Operation Wasabi Cream. Lana nearly choked on her miso soup when I told her the plan. You want to fill ice cream with wasabi? Like real wasabi? The kind that makes grown men cry in my restaurant. I nodded slowly, a man possessed. Not just cry, I said. I want her to rethink every life decision that led her to that spoon. I showed her the spy cam footage again, this time with dramatic music layered in, just to drive home the criminal absurdity. Karen, HOA president and self-declared food inspector, had finally picked the wrong frozen treat. And now it was time for me to turn dessert into a weapon of poetic justice. Lana didn't just agree to help, she went full mad scientist. Within 24 hours, she had cleared out her kitchen's backroom and set up a wasabi lab that looked like it belonged to a Bond villain. We ordered pints of premium vanilla and mint chip, carefully melted them down, and mixed in precise amounts of restaurant-grade wasabi. The first batch wasn't strong enough. Karen had a palate forged in HOA committee meetings and passive-aggressive rage. She needed a dose that hit like betrayal. By the third trial, we created a blend that made Lana cry just from the fumes. I dipped a tiny spoon in for a test. Half a second later, my entire skull lit up like a Christmas tree, and I sneezed so hard I scared a stray cat off the back porch. Perfect. We carefully refroze the mixture in pristine, untouched containers, exact replicas of the ones she'd stolen before. To avoid suspicion, we kept them in the same freezer spot, behind the fake healthy ice cream no one dared touch. Everything had to look natural. Any sign of tampering and she'd smell a trap. Karen wasn't smart, but she was annoyingly cunning, like a raccoon with a gavel. Just to be safe, I made a few signs that read, "Not for consumption, contains spice," and tucked them under the lids. It wasn't for her. It was for the cops in case she tried anything stupid after the fact. I even filmed myself preparing the containers, documenting every step, every label. There would be no lawsuits in my future. Just karma, frozen and served cold. That weekend, I left the garage door slightly open again. It had become the bait signal, the little flag that told Karen the coast was clear and the dairy was plentiful. I sat inside, pretending to clean out the junk drawer, but really just watching the motion detector app on my phone like a hawk. At 1:14 p.m., I got the ping. Freezer opened. 30 seconds later, I saw her on the ring cam, walking away like she just bagged a clearance coach purse at a flea market. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. She strutted. And then I waited. It didn't take long. 12 minutes later, I heard a scream. Not a normal scream. Not even a spider in the bathroom scream. This was the primal howl of a woman betrayed by her own gluttony. I ran to the window and peeked out just in time to see Karen stumbling around her yard, red in the face, ice cream smeared across her lips like war paint. She had the garden hose turned on full blast and was chugging it straight into her mouth. Her Crocs squeaked violently against the patio tiles as she slipped and collapsed onto her begonias. It was beautiful. A few neighbors came out to check the noise. Karen, mid-panic, tried to talk but could only emit a noise like a kettle trying to speak in tongues. One lady asked if she was having an allergic reaction. Karen waved her arms like she was being attacked by bees, then stumbled inside, leaving a trail of damp grass clippings and mint-flavored shame behind her. I barely had time to celebrate when the cops showed up. 2 cruisers. Lights on. I opened the door calmly, holding a cup of coffee like I hadn't just committed a refrigerated war crime. Officer Jenkins was in the lead. I knew him well. He once got called to my house because Karen accused me of displaying offensive wind chimes. He gave me a nod like he already suspected this was about her. Karen came stomping up behind the cops like a furious toddler with a legal dictionary. She pointed a shaking finger at me. He poisoned me. That monster filled ice cream with wasabi. I could have died. Officer Jenkins raised an eyebrow and looked at me. I sipped my coffee. I have camera footage, I said. She trespassed into my garage, stole my ice cream, again, and got exactly what she deserved. And just to be safe, the container was clearly labeled. I'll show you the footage, the labels, even the prep video. Everything's documented. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She hadn't expected that. She thought I'd panic. She thought I'd grovel. Instead, I was calmly offering evidence like I was the host of a true crime documentary. Officer Jenkins followed me inside, and I showed him everything. The hidden cam footage of Karen's theft. The warning label inside the lid. The prep video with timestamp. Lana had even signed off on the batch in a mock culinary sabotage document she made just for fun. After reviewing it all, Officer Jenkins stepped outside and spoke to his partner. Karen stood there, arms folded, breathing like a dragon who just learned about lactose intolerance. Finally, Jenkins returned and said, "Ma'am, you entered his garage without permission." He labeled the item. "This is a civil issue, not criminal." Karen exploded. "I'm the HOA president. I have access rights." "No, you don't," he said flatly. "Emergency inspections are limited to visible outdoor violations. Entering someone's garage for a snack doesn't qualify." Karen turned so red I thought she might finally ignite from residual wasabi fumes. She screamed something about lawsuits and neighborhood bylaws and then stormed back to her house, still hiccuping fire. That night, I celebrated with Lana on my back porch. We watched the security footage on loop, laughing until our sides hurt. Karen, the neighborhood tyrant, taken down by spicy revenge and a spoonful of hubris. For once, the ice cream was safe. But something about the way Karen looked as she retreated, fuming, muttering, plotting, told me this wasn't over. People like her don't quit. They regroup. They scheme. And she had an entire HOA rulebook to hide behind. Lana leaned back in her chair and raised her glass. "To Operation Wasabi Cream." I clinked mine with hers. "To justice," I said, smiling. "And gastrointestinal karma." 3 days passed without a word from Karen, and for a moment, I foolishly believed the storm had passed. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had taken the hit, licked her wounds, perhaps literally, and decided it wasn't worth pushing further. But then, at 7:43 a.m. on a Monday, I woke up to a notice duct-taped to my front door. It was printed on official HOA letterhead, with her signature scrawled across the bottom like a declaration of war. The document was titled Emergency Conduct Review, Article 17 Subsection B, Community Endangerment. I didn't even need to read the rest. Karen was making her move. According to the notice, I was being summoned to an emergency disciplinary hearing, to be held that evening in the HOA clubhouse. The charges? distribution of hazardous food substances, intentional infliction of emotional distress, public endangerment, and culinary weaponization. She was trying to frame me as some sort of flavor terrorist. There was even a vague mention of potential eviction for gross misconduct unbecoming of a community member. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so sinister. I showed up to the HOA meeting 10 minutes early, dressed in my cleanest polo shirt and carrying a thumb drive with my evidence. The clubhouse smelled like expired coffee and artificial lemon cleaner. Folding chairs were lined up in uneven rows, filled with the usual HOA meeting crowd. Retirees who treated bylaws like scripture, nosy neighbors with nothing better to do, and board members who enjoyed power way too much for people who managed pet waste stations and sidewalk cracks. At the front table sat Karen, flanked by 2 board members and a clipboard with so many tabs it looked like she was preparing for a courtroom trial. She greeted me with a smile so smug it could have curdled milk. "We appreciate your presence," she said. "Hopefully, this can be resolved swiftly and in accordance with HOA integrity standards." I smiled back, but mine had bite. Looking forward to it. The meeting opened with Karen delivering a monologue worthy of a bad legal drama. She claimed she had been tricked, ambushed, assaulted by an illicit, fiery substance designed to cause pain and humiliation. She recounted her symptoms with theatrical flair. Burning throat, blurred vision, emotional trauma, and dramatically mentioned she'd been unable to enjoy frozen treats since the incident. Somewhere in the second row, Mrs. Donahue gasped like she was watching a soap opera. Then it was my turn. I stood up, plugged in my thumb drive, and loaded my presentation titled Karen vs. Ice Cream, a Cold Case. I walked the crowd through the footage, starting with the thefts, the garage entry, the spy cam inside the popsicle box. Laughter rippled through the audience when Karen's face appeared mid-theft, lips wrapped around a spoon she clearly brought with her. Then I showed the labeled Wasabi pint and the documentation of its preparation, complete with a warning sticker and video commentary. Lana had even thrown in dramatic music for flair. By the end, the room wasn't just entertained, they were angry. Not at me. At her. This wasn't a one-time misunderstanding. This was a pattern. A history. A calculated abuse of power. I pointed out that she had fined half the neighborhood for absurd reasons over the past year. Cracks in driveways, Halloween decorations staying up too long, lawn flamingos exceeding her bird ornament limit. Several neighbors nodded in agreement. One guy stood up and shouted, "She fined me for parking my own boat in my own driveway." I dropped the final bombshell. A recorded voicemail Karen had accidentally left on my line when trying to call a board member. In it, she bragged about putting that ice cream punk in his place, and joked about how she was going to turn the whole neighborhood against me. There was silence, then murmurs, then full-blown mutiny. That's when it got even better. One of the board members, Larry, who had always seemed slightly spineless, raised his hand and cleared his throat. "I think it's time we share what we recently uncovered," he said. He pulled out his phone and played a recording. Karen's voice, unmistakably hers, offering to reimburse him for a family vacation in exchange for siding with her during the vote. The room exploded. Karen jumped to her feet, her face now cycling between all shades of panic. "That's taken out of context. This is slander. I was joking." No one believed her. Then another board member, Rhonda, added fuel to the fire. "Actually, I have a receipt here showing HOA funds were used for spa treatments last month under the name K. Jefferson. Care to explain that, Karen?" Karen's jaw dropped. The room turned into a courtroom drama. Neighbors shouted, board members argued, and in the chaos, one person actually tried to start a petition right there to remove Karen as HOA president. I just sat back, sipping bottled water, watching the downfall unfold like a perfectly directed film. Karen had built her little empire on rules, fear, and passive-aggressive citations. But the ice cream incident had cracked the dam, and now everything was flooding out. The final nail came when Officer Jenkins showed up, not because of an emergency, but because someone had invited him as a character witness. He calmly walked to the front and addressed the crowd. "I've been called out to this neighborhood a dozen times in the past year. Most of those calls came from one person, and they've almost always been creative." He looked right at Karen. "I've never seen someone more committed to wasting both time and taxpayer resources." The vote to remove Karen happened immediately after. It was unanimous. She was forced to step down on the spot, stripped of her presidency, and given a formal community reprimand. A real HOA first. She tried to leave with her clipboard, but someone reminded her those were community property. Watching her storm out, humiliated and clipboardless, was better than any ice cream in the world. Later that night, I threw a small celebration in my backyard. Just a few neighbors, some snacks, and of course, plenty of ice cream. The real kind this time. Lana showed up with a tub of her homemade sushi-flavored novelty sorbet, but no one touched it. We laughed, reminisced, and for the first time in ages, it felt like the neighborhood was finally free of the ridiculous tension that had hung over it like a storm cloud. But even as the night wound down and the laughter faded, I had this small, buzzing thought in the back of my mind. Karen had been dethroned, but people like her don't disappear. They slither. They plot. They find new ways to regain power. And I had a strange feeling this wasn't the last time I'd hear her name. Still, for now, the ice cream was safe. And my garage was, once again, my own. The weeks after Karen's dethroning were almost unnervingly peaceful. The sun shone a little brighter. The air smelled like freshly cut grass and not HOA-issued fear. For the first time in over a year, no one got a ticket for slightly overgrown hedges or parking 3 inches over a line. The whole neighborhood felt lighter, like we'd collectively exhaled a breath we didn't know we'd been holding. People actually waved to each other. One guy even brought his grill to the sidewalk and hosted a spontaneous burger night. It was beautiful, and while a part of me wanted to believe Karen had taken her loss and moved on to terrorize another neighborhood, I knew better. She wasn't the type to bow out quietly. She was just regrouping, sulking somewhere in a cloud of eucalyptus oil and passive aggression, waiting for the right moment to re-emerge. That moment came far sooner than I expected. It started with rumors. Whispers on the neighborhood Facebook group about Karen being spotted at the local strip mall. Someone claimed she was working at the frozen yogurt shop. I laughed it off at first, until Lana texted me a blurry photo of Karen behind the toppings counter, scowling at a kid who spilled gummy bears. I stared at the image, dumbfounded. From HOA president to yogurt pusher. It was so poetically ironic it almost didn't feel real. I went down there the next day, not to gloat, okay, maybe a little to gloat, but mostly to confirm it with my own eyes. She was there. Hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, visor shading her eyes, paper-thin smile plastered across her face like a poorly applied sticker. I ordered a swirl of vanilla and matcha, mostly to test her patience. As she rang me up, she didn't make eye contact. I could see the tension in her jaw. She handed me my change with a tremble in her hand that only I seemed to notice. It wasn't fear. It was fury. Contained. Seething. A volcano capped with sprinkles. I didn't say a word. I just gave her the faintest smile, the kind that says, "I won," and walked out with my cup held high like a trophy. That could have been the end. That should have been the end. But Karen wasn't done. A week later, I got a knock on the door. It was one of the newer board members, a woman named Stephanie. She looked nervous, holding a folder like it was radioactive. "So, there's something you need to see," she said. Inside the folder were copies of new proposals, official-looking HOA amendment draft. Each one signed by none other than Karen Jefferson. I blinked. "She doesn't have any authority," I said. "She was removed. She's just a regular resident now." Stephanie nodded quickly. "That's what we thought. But she's been lobbying. Going door to door. Scaring people. Telling them the neighborhood's falling apart without her. That if we don't reinstate certain policies, property values will tank. I couldn't believe it. She was trying to manipulate her way back into power by seeding panic. Classic Karen. Using fear and fake concern to claw back control. I told Stephanie to leave the folder with me. That night, I read every proposal. Some were harmless, more streetlights, better landscaping, but buried in the middle was a draft amendment allowing trusted former HOA officials limited supervisory authority during times of administrative inconsistency. It was a backdoor. A legal sleight of hand that would give Karen unofficial power disguised as oversight. If it passed, she'd be able to fine people again. She could override minor board decisions. She'd have influence without the title. It was pure manipulation, and honestly, kind of genius in a diabolical way. I wasn't going to let that happen. The next weekend, I threw what I called a neighborhood freezer fair. I set up a huge cooler in my front yard with a sign, "Free ice cream. No wasabi, I promise." Lana donated enough pints to serve half the block. I passed out flyers, set up chairs, and even hired a local guitarist to play background music. It was a party disguised as a political maneuver. People came in droves. Kids ran around with cones, parents chatted and laughed. And when everyone was gathered, I stepped up with a mic and a smile. I told them about the new proposals. I showed the documents, the sneaky language. I reminded them of the fines, the threats, the lawn citation madness. I played clips from the last HOA meeting for those who missed it. Karen had hoped time would make people forget. But I made sure they remembered. The best part? I had printed "Vote No to Karen's Comeback" stickers and passed them out like candy. People wore them proudly. It was peaceful, it was positive, and it was powerful. And it worked. The following week, when the vote came through, not a single amendment passed. Karen's proposals were crushed like stale cookies. Her influence was officially and utterly dead. She didn't show her face for a while after that. Someone said she took a leave of absence from the yogurt shop. Others claimed she was spotted at a community 2 towns over, possibly scoping out new victims. Wherever she went, it didn't matter. She was gone from here. To celebrate, I upgraded my garage freezer. I bought a state-of-the-art, triple-insulated, motion-detecting smart freezer. I named it the Vault. I even got a label made for it that read, "Karen-proof. Frostbite possible." It made Lana laugh so hard she nearly dropped her tuna roll. As a final touch, I got elected to a new role the board created, community liaison. Basically, I was the neighborhood's informal mediator and event planner. I couldn't fine anyone, but I could organize cookouts, coordinate cleanup days, and, more importantly, block anyone like Karen from ever slipping back in through some legal loophole. Things returned to normal. Real normal. Neighbors helped each other out. HOA meetings were boring in the best way. No drama. Just small fixes and occasional jokes about wasabi. Lana and I, naturally, turned the wasabi ice cream story into a side hustle. We launched a website selling prank pints, clearly labeled, of course, and called the brand Cold Karma. It sold out within days. We even got featured in a quirky foodie magazine. There's something universally satisfying about petty revenge wrapped in vanilla and heat. Months later, on a calm summer night, I sat in my backyard, feet up, bowl of actual delicious ice cream in hand. As the cicadas buzzed and distant sprinklers hissed, I thought back to how a simple missing pint had spiraled into neighborhood chaos. And yet somehow, out of the madness, something good had come. Justice had been served, cold, spicy, and unforgettable. Karen may have started it, but I made sure I finished it. Because revenge is a dish best served frozen. With wasabi.